And I think it's important to note that this conversation isn't about panic or hype. It's just a reality of where we're at. So I think it's great for us to embody that and to understand what it really looks like right now for our kids at NEISD and how we're going to guide our students to use it responsibly. So let me go ahead and jump in here. I want to start really simple with our campus leaders, Ms. Whitaker or Ms. Pearson here. How is AI built into lesson plans, and is it mostly student-driven at this point?
So I would say at this point, it really depends on the teacher and on the department. You know, a lot of teachers are very comfortable with AI and a lot of teachers aren't. And what we're seeing on our campus is that teachers are using it in their lesson plans, in building activities for students, but students themselves, from what I'm hearing, are not really the ones using AI in the lesson. It's more of the teacher in helping improve their lessons for the students.
Just to piggyback, yes, it's an instructional support tool on our campuses for the most part. Students do generate work. Later on, if you want to see actually how academic work they've actually done in their classes, that is supported through the teacher though, because just like they were talking about up there, it's the supervision part. In order to get a lot of academic feedback, immediate feedback, they are using AI. Some of the tools, I don't know if you want to write them down, but I have a couple here, like Class Companion, you might hear, or ask them questions about that. They utilize that in their history course. For history, as far as what's happened, is you get a lot of information right at once, and they're like, did they understand anything that I just went and covered? Well, they'll give them a prompt, which is something that's teacher facilitated, and then that information from AI will actually provide them feedback after what they have stated, like, did you get any of the information? Did you summarize correctly? And so, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but you have most teachers have about 120, 150 kids. So that way, those students are getting immediate feedback in the classroom from a tool that is, again, generated from a teacher, and then it helps them support. So again, it's a support tool, not necessarily, generated by the students, but more facilitated by the teacher of record.
And I'm going to speak from ICSI. Our teachers use this tool for the majority of their lesson planning. I'm going to have a fact here because Mr. Beck, he's one of our founding teachers at ICSI. We do a lot of live activities where students are having to do red team, blue team kind of things, all related to cybersecurity. And as you might know, all of that is AI. And the faster our students can respond to a threat in the real world, they can respond to more of them and prevent more attacks. So on the teaching side, before AI, a 20 to 30 minute activity like that would take a teacher 3 to 4 hours to develop. Now that time is less than 30 minutes with the use of AI tools. And on the opposite side of that, students can finish those activities in 3 to 4 minutes rather than hours, and then they can learn how to respond to separate activities and separate attacks that they might experience. Because no matter what they do in this field, AI is going to be there from the attack side and from the prevention side.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just having to. Mr. Jarrett, from a district perspective, how much exposure are students really getting across NEISD, and is this widespread yet, or is it still developing?
It's still developing. So when AI first hit, again, I was a slow adopter. And so our technology folks, and they remember this, they came in and said, hey, Mr. Jarrett, AI. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm out on that. But as they started talking to me, I really started to get curious. And so I even brought the book. I even bought a book so I can do AI leadership, just to tell you that I'm working on myself a little bit. But I think what's important is that we really thought it was important to take a step back and really make sure we put the training wheels on this vehicle. And what we did is, as those folks, Maria's sitting over there, and she's really our AI person that really kind of attended all the training and really put a focus group of principals together and campus leaders to develop an AI playbook for our district. And the reason they did that is we first need to educate our educators on AI. And it really stood out to me because I went to a campus, and it was beginning of the year, and some kiddos were in there. And I recall very distinctly the principal walking in and says, hey, AI is great. I use it to create my agenda. I didn't even have to think about it. And then he left. And I was like, that's not good. Because what it did is it promoted convenience. And convenience sometimes have consequence without clarity on how to use it appropriately. And so at that point in time, I realized that we really need to slow down. It's not saying that we don't adopt something that's inevitable. But I think to protect our children and our staff, we need to make sure people understand how to use the tools effectively and efficiently on a regular basis. Too often you'll see people using the tool solely for the purpose so they don't have to think. But that should be the total opposite. AI should be pushing deeper critical thinking versus surface level fact checking. And so as they're navigating this, they're having to go through a lot of training models. I know they've spoken at principal meetings, they've spoken at Leadership Institute, but here's the thing, it's not sticking. I'm not going to play naive and think everybody has embraced it the right way. I think still we're looking for the silver bullet, and there isn't one. The only thing that's silver is the hard work that comes along with it. And so we're still on the journey. We have not completely immersed ourselves in it. We do make sure any company that is trying to enter our district, they have to sign a data sharing agreement. And we put that in place, I'm looking at Maria, like 4 years ago, I think it was. 4 years ago, we made every company that we were already working with go back in and sign a data sharing agreement. I will tell you, some people did not want to do it. Those people are no longer with us. And the reason being is that we wanted to protect our students' information just as much as we want to protect the building. And so that was the first step. Then we have larger corporations, they refuse to sign a data sharing agreement, like Microsoft. Part of that is because they have a big umbrella of understanding on how to make sure information is secure and safe for their end users. And that's what the gentleman said on the video about a closed system. We operate a closed system because we don't want our data leaving. And then I think the other part, and I don't know if this is, I'm bird walking a little bit, but AI doesn't end at 4 o'clock with the teacher in the school. AI is ramped up at 4:15 all the way through the middle of the night. And so it becomes extremely important that as we talk about AI, we talk about partnership. Because we have to have a reciprocal relationship that is communicating back and forth to protect our children from misusage of it. And I know it's not easy. I had teenagers, and I'm gonna tell you, the phone you tell them to turn into you, they have another one that does the same thing that you don't know about. And it may not even be a phone. It could be a game that you think is completely innocent, but these tools have so much capability that we have to be very astute of what children have access to and say, we need to find times to disengage, to log off, and not just live a life under AI in isolation.
Thank you. So, kind of going on that, I'd like to ask our campus administrators here on the campus level, you know, a lot of parents, like you just said, are afraid that AI is replacing thinking. So what skills are we prioritizing now that AI can write essays and solve math problems? What are y'all doing on a campus level there?
So, as they mentioned in the other panel that we were listening to, you know, there are skills, human skills, life skills that we need in addition to just getting that information quickly. And so, yes, any of these AI systems can spit out an essay, but can you explain to your teacher how you got your information and which sources you used, and validating the information that just popped up beyond just giving the teacher that information, if that makes sense. Putting a personal touch on things. How does this relate to your personal experience versus just sharing that information with your teacher? So trying to not just ask questions where you get a quick snippet of data, but going beyond that to the explanation and the data and the personal connection.
Yes, ma'am. Just to piggyback, it does not take the place of critical thinking. We like to challenge your students on, is this correct or not? And just because the AI spits out some information to you, again, just like talking about some of these activities that they did, their job was actually to cite sources. Like, based upon what this information that you're given, can you find that somewhere else? also, and how frequently can you find it, and who are you finding it from. So it doesn't stop as far as the critical thinking skill on there. Also, I would say analyzing and evaluation of other people's work as well is really important on there. So the whole brainstorming piece, and I want to say the critical thinking does not stop just because they're using AI as a tool, once again.
Yeah, and I was going to say that processing piece is really important. So it's not just here, you're writing the essay and turning it in. What we see our teachers doing is breaking down that process so that, you know, there's the hypothesis or the critical thinking piece that the student is researching first, and they're doing it in chunks. What I can say for the early college program is, you know, so our students have a lot of access through Canvas, through their college courses, and there are AI checkers that the college pays for. And so when a student writes an essay and turns it in, even the teacher on the high school side, it'll tell them a percentage. This percentage is likely 80% AI. But instead of just saying, here's a 0, we're not going to accept this, that's now giving the student and the teacher an opportunity to reflect and say, okay, what way can we use that tool to help you cite sources for your paper versus actually writing the paper for you. So it gives them a time to go back, think, revise, edit, and resubmit for a better score in their essays. Thank you.
Okay, we've heard from the adults quite a bit. I'd like to hear from our students on this for a minute. Alexa, do you ever feel pressure to use AI? And how do you personally decide what's okay and what might cross a line?
I don't feel pressured to because I'm comfortable with my own brain. What was the other part?
Let me see here. Oh, do you kind of know what crosses the line? Like what kind of pushes you there to that point?
Against it or for it? What?
When to use it?
Oh. I can see it being used to help re-explain like mathematical equations, and then also for coding, because it's very limited to alter or predict what will be generated out next. But I don't like when it's used in creative fields at all, because I am an artist and a writer, and if ChatGPT, for example, is very formulatic and homogeneous with its type of structure within Morgan, and people will not gain creativity or thinking just by copying and pasting it. Some people might look it over, but many people, many at my school I know of, just copy and paste it without thought, and then don't know anything, which is really sad.
I personally don't feel pressured to use AI. Sorry, what was the other part again?
So you don't feel pressured to use AI?
I do not.
Do you ever feel that it kind of replaces learning in a way? That it takes away your critical thinking?
I've never thought that it takes away my critical thinking. I know that it does to some people, but I believe that if you use it right, then it won't.
Do you think that it actually might make learning more fun and more helpful at times?
I think that it can at times. I know that a lot of the time I've used AI to for things like it can, like if you ask what would be a good thing to draw, that would be a good use of AI, I think. And yeah.
So you use it more as a building tool to kind of advance your thought on that.
Yes.
What kind of AI do you use at home?
Things like ChatGPT, just for questions that I have that randomly pop into my head, like can chickens fly?
Excellent. Alexa, do you ever use AI at home?
No, maybe besides the Google summary, but even then I click on the links to dive into myself with it.
Are you, as you're applying for schools, I'm assuming you're at that point, do you ever feel a pressure to use AI to help you write an essay or even complete an application, maybe even look up information about a school that you might steer you towards something in that way?
Google, not a large language model that can only predict or clump together phrases, while Google is a natural search engine versus ChatGPT, where it just gives what it sees the most data on. Like the guy Clay Smith that was on there, he talked about all the points that I have, towards it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to come back to y'all in a minute because y'all have lots of interesting issues on that. I think as parents, I want to ask about the high school and the CT and our campus leadership here. Speaking of college, how are colleges going to know what's authentic work versus an AI-assisted work on applications and scholarships? And we kind of touched on that, hit on that a little bit, but where are we really going to be on that? What should we be looking for as we help our kids prepare for that process?
I mean, like I said before, there are checkers now that most colleges use, but I think teaching our kids the authenticity piece of writing those essays and doing those applications. I mean, we can even see it in emails that we receive from parents. If it's written by AI, you immediately know, right? And so responding in a way to those parents where it's more authentic too, but I think giving the kids the tools, early on, middle school through high school, this is how we're going to write an email. And you're not going to use AI to write it. We're going to use our brains. We're going to think about what we want to say. And so we can't stop them from doing it, submitting their essays like that when they go to college. But we can give them the tools. It's all about the tools, right? How can AI help them write the essay better, but not writing it for them? Because they will know. Like the colleges people who are reading those essays can tell what's truly authentic and what's been generated by AI.
Is there a way we will know if we want to read their essay before they submit it?
I think you'll know. Yeah, I mean, I think when you read the language and you know your student in how they speak and how they talk and how they write, and it doesn't sound like how they speak and they talk and they write, then you know that some of it or all of it might have been generated in that way. And we use it. I mean, I'm not going to say that I don't write emails with AI. I do, because sometimes we're really angry when we want to say an email and we have to make it, make more sense and softer. And, AI is a good tool for that because you don't always have immediately the right words to say. So it's the same thing with our kids. It's like, am I going to copy and paste the entire email? No. I'm going to look at the email, pick out the parts that resonate or the words that are helpful to me, and that's what we have to teach our students. But you will be able to see it. You'll be able to tell if it's something that's completely generated versus their thoughts and their expressions.
Did you want to add anything to that, Mr. Drew?
I do. So I think it's twofold too, and I've seen this where kiddos can be falsely accused of cheating, and then that starts to hurt relationships between the child, the teacher, at home, etc. And so I think it's also about how we model mutual respect in a classroom, in our approach and how we talk to kids when we think something is off track of of their original work. And I agree with this young lady. I think one of the things that make us special as humans is our unique ability and our unique mindsets and our unique souls. And I think we have to figure out how we're navigating this new world, that we don't lose sight, that we don't want a monoculture that doesn't have their own identity. And so I think it's important that we focus on some mutual respect components. And I think two things is that we have to bury our egos and not be afraid so we can be humble.
Wonderful.
I've had to dumb down essays because I got accused of doing AI a lot. So I've had to leave in spelling mistakes or else I get accused of AI way too often.
So you feel like AI is almost, you kind of incurred a punishment at times for your own critical thinking skills.
And I have a kiddo in college, and she came home. She's like, and she's kind of like you. She's like, I'm going to fight this. He is not going to accuse me of cheating and saying I'm cheating. And I have all my edits, and I have the tracking sheet and all of this. And I really had to talk to her about the approach, because he was an old school English teacher, and she has a high vocabulary, and she's saying words that you probably won't see from a lot of people. And I said, you may not be the norm. And so you too got to go in there and advocate for yourself, but you have to do it from a place of respect. You don't have to dumb it down, though, sweetheart.
Did get a question in a broader conversation here about is the environmental impact like water consumption from AI something that schools should be worried about?
Yeah. So,
I was telling my daughter last night that I was sitting on this panel. She's 14. She's coming into high school next year. And she goes, "You're the one responsible for killing all the polar bears." And it made me laugh because when we look at social media and how social media is talking about AI, kids are picking up now on both sides. So is that something that kids are looking at to say, no, I'm not going to use it because I don't want to destroy it? So it is definitely something that's being talked about. She wouldn't have come home and say it. Now, I don't know if she heard it in school or if she heard it from YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or whatever else she's on. But kids are, I think, with all the access that we have to information now, kids are way more socially aware to these issues than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Discernment, so I was like, I don't know anything about the other part of the polar bears, and I said, but what we're teaching as far as the literacy part, and can they discern?
Okay, let's talk a little bit about ensuring equity. We don't want AI widening gaps between campuses or student groups. So when we say that, what kind of steps are we putting in at Northeast ISD to make sure that doesn't happen?
I'm not sure about widening gaps. I think AI affords us an opportunity for kiddos who are struggling with an essential concept or skill to practice it more frequently because AI is seeing the problems of practice with that particular child. So it actually could be closing the gaps for some kiddos that maybe are a year behind or 2 years behind, and they need a skill that they need to practice more frequently than another student. So it does lend itself to that possibility, and they have many applications that are doing diagnostic, and then it'll say, oh, you're doing quadratic equation, you missed this part, and then they send them another question, and then once the kids get to that point where they show mastery, then they move on to the next thing. It's only so many hours in a day, so AI could allow us to accelerate the learning process for some of those kiddos.
When
And
we
I-
say, oh, go ahead.
I will just add that, every campus has access to instructional technology specialists and professional development and the same programs and applications. And so, as far as that goes, it really comes down to finding those rock star teachers on your campus who are doing it well and tapping into their expertise, more than it does campus to campus.
When we say an AI-ready graduate, what does that actually mean in Northeast? Mr. Jarrett, you want to take that one?
Nothing. So here's what I mean by that. I don't think we focus on one thing in a singular space at any point in time. I think we talk about a Northeast graduate, and that's a holistic look. Is this person a critical thinker? Is this person a problem solver? Do they know how to use the tools that are presented to them in an effective and efficient manner? Do they have honesty and integrity? So I don't think we would ever get to the point that we have an AI graduate, but we can have a future-ready graduate. And that is someone who is prepared for what the next thing is that's thrown their way. And it takes young people like these two to be able to guide us. And I think we, as adults, have to spend the time listening and learning so we can prepare a better future for them. I will tell you, people that have interviewed for me, I don't hire you for the job today. I hire you for the job 20 years from now. Because the thing that it is that we have to keep on meeting students where they're at instead of students just coming to where we've been.
Just to kind of add on to that about the graduate profile being an AI-ready student, I mean, I think, if you look at all our kids who go through STEM programs and ICSI and technological programs, they can adapt and change to those skills and they can learn them. But when we talk and we give tours at ICSI, we have our students give the tours because they are working on those skills that the industry is telling us they don't see. And so when they go out into the industry, they know that our kids can do all this stuff. They have all the certifications to be successful in the field. But can they talk to people? Can they work on teams? Can they do all of those things? So I think it's more a holistic approach when we're talking as a student, an AI-ready graduate. Yeah, sure, they can be, but are they ready to go out in the world and work and work with people?
Got one more thing. I think for us too, the next challenge as we are talking about future is when we're building programs now, we have to think about programs that's going to yield kids a job opportunity. AI is going to start automating a lot of things in this world that don't require a human element. And And so we're offering programs that's kind of antiquated, that is no longer going to require the human element to engage with, and we're missing the mark. And so that's something that we're going to have to evaluate and strategically abandon and strategically adopt new systems to prepare our future generation kiddos. And that's the challenge that we're up for, but we have to look closely at when we're talking about programs in our district.
Okay, I'm sure that some of y'all here might have questions for our panel. Does anyone here have a question that they would like to ask our panel? Oh, we're so quiet. No question.
I do have a question, and it's not just AI, but it's technology stuff. We've noticed, my daughter has recently student taught once at Reagan, and now she's at another district, and she's noticed that since we've taken the phones away, that we are still not teaching our kids how to speak with one another or how to start conversation. And she said the other day we were talking about AI, and she said she feels like AI is getting in the way of that as well, because kids no longer work in a team. Like when they're doing a group project, she saw very few group projects, very few chances for kids to interact with each other. And so how do we as a district keep supporting that and teach I feel like we have to teach our kids again how to make friends or how to speak to one another, how to be social. How are we going to enhance that and encourage our kids to do that? Sorry.
Together. I think I go back to what I said from the beginning. AI, when it came out, CNN, C-SPAN, whatever, AI, I was like, oh, whatever. The reality of it is we knew something was coming 10 years ago. And it seems to me that we should have been preparing for that a long time ago, and we didn't. And so now we're having to undo some things that we used to encourage. Because years ago when I was teaching, part of our evaluation system was, how much did you use technology in your lesson? And then you got these high marks if you were this technology person, and they even made me the technology person of the campus. You believe that? I was even like shocked. But it was so much of a push to integrate technology that we've lost our way a little bit, and we didn't strike a balance. And so part of our handbook, and I just pulled it up, is that, and Maria and her team focused on balance, human connection, intention, reflection, transparency, and best practices. That's the areas that they focus on because they recognize that sometimes it's easy to sit in front of a device versus have a conversation. But AI could lend itself to that by probing a question that forces kids to think critically, problem solve, and deliver something different and unique.
I don't need it, I'm pretty loud.
Jackson, I was going to ask you. She was going to add to it.
I've like seen a lot of people, and I have it I struggle with it too, where I don't really get a lot of talking or friends with people because they become hard to talk to. I don't know how else to word it. Where they also, I don't know, I'm trying to think how to word it. I feel like we are kind of disconnecting a little, and people aren't learning a lot of manners. Because I've been, like, there's insults thrown casually in conversation, and to people who don't even know, or side-eyeing for a compliment. And then people get, like, laughed at for trying to make friends in high school, which is really stupid.
Jackson, do you feel like AI deters you from working with groups in projects and connecting with your peers?
Absolutely not. I personally, I use AI when it's necessary, or whenever I'm bored. But AI has never stopped me from working well with a group. I've always worked well with groups.
Do you think sometimes those prompts from AI, like Mr. Jarrett was talking about, maybe those prompts encourage you to make those connections with your peers at school?
I would say that I have made friends about as well as I have with or without AI.
Do we have any more questions from our? We have a mic for you.
So they talked about introducing technology, AI, whatever, throughout the school year. My philosophy is I don't think that now, knowing what we know now, Mr. Jarrett, in regards to the early introduction, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, they're missing the human connection because they're on a screen. And we especially saw that with COVID, when we suddenly put everybody online, left them at home, couldn't interact with anybody, and that really has been extremely detrimental, especially when some new research has just come out talking about in 2002 when we were really bringing in the Chromebooks for every student in every classroom. Maine really went overboard with it, and we're seeing the largest cognitive decline in our students ever. So at what time do you guys think for this district is it appropriate to begin that introduction? Because I'm thinking high school, maybe a little bit, starting to like type, because I can't read my daughter's handwriting. She doesn't know how to write in cursive. Her first name, signature, I'm like, what is this? My third grader, or my son at third grade learned, and he totally adopted it. But we have so many students that can't do, can't think, can't critically think. And we're saying they can, but they can't. And you specified that, you know, they write an essay and you can say it's 80% AI, and you say go back and correct it. But I can tell you, more than the majority are not doing that. Those teachers are just giving them a bad grade. There's no reconnection, recorrection, nothing like that. So at what point are you guys wanting to introduce? Do you want to pull back? Do you want to push more? Like that's what I'd like to know as a...
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think I want to go backwards and forward and get to your point. So the pandemic forced everybody into a digital push beyond anything we've ever seen. From the federal government to everybody pushing devices into every kid's hands and everything. But then our state testing also came along and said all testing will be online, including our littles in elementary school. And once that happened, it shifted the narrative that we had to get kiddos in front of these devices to practice using the device, the tools, because essentially it's a time test, they got to do it online, and a lot of the kids didn't have the skills because they didn't have access to it. So now we're at a place where now they got the skills, but now you got to start pulling back a little bit and saying, how much time should a kid spend on the device? And that is something they have been working on, and our technology department is really creating a lesson cycle that is going to actually outline how much time a kid actually should be on the device or at all. And that is going to be a process because, I think we got so far over our skis. And actually, we were one of the late adopters with any kind of, and we're still not a one-to-one district. We just have enough devices that kind of hung around long enough for us to give them to kids. But we were one of the last districts to adopt a one-to-one system. A lot of districts, they went one-to-one, and that's what they live off of. But we got to get to the point where, especially at the younger ages, it's getting age appropriate. And get real crystal clear, elementary school kids need to be writing. Elementary school kids need to be practicing their skills on actual paper and learning from that. They're going to have to transfer that knowledge, but I don't think we have the lack of understanding to use a device to a degree that perhaps people may use as an excuse why kids are on a device. Middle school, you should increase. You should see a little bit more usage of devices because they're going to be applying their knowledge in a digital world. They're going to be in data or CETA, whatever the programs are. And then high school, the floodgates are going to open because their lives are very complex. They're sitting in, I think we have 2,132 courses in high school. And there is no way to say whether this is appropriate for that course or that course because the teacher ultimately is the one that has to make that decision. But we are re-looking and reevaluating how do we get kids back to that place of simplicity, and how do we get kids back to that place where it's increased collaboration, and how do we get kids to a place where they're critical thinking and pushing against the ideas of another person. That isn't our focus, and we are going to have to do some heavy training to undo the training, if that makes sense. And it is a challenge because on one breath, we also are going to have people saying, no, full steam ahead. But that's why I'm a 5. Because I don't believe that we're ready to jump to an 8 or 9. That's how you lead yourself into malpractice. And when you get into malpractice, you very well could be setting young people up for failure, and that's something I can't live with.
As a thought, so is the district pushing back on the STAR being online? Because I really do feel like that was you should not have done that at all.
So, and I hear them up and we don't have to say. Well, here's what I'll say. We always have to say. It's just a question, will they listen? So to that, yeah. And I think with all the new research that is coming out and all the extra push, there's going to be some more pressure. But again, convenience comes with consequence. The state moved to online because everybody wanted their results sooner. And you want the results sooner so that schools can appropriately plan to give the kids the best seat in the house that they need to meet their needs. So we're always in this, and that's the one thing about education right now, we feel like we're kind of squeezed in the middle because no matter what we do, we're wrong. And no matter what we do, we're right. We're just always in the middle. But to your point, I think everybody's going to take a step back and reconsider a time and space. Will it go away online? I doubt it. Will it be reconsidered for elementary? Maybe.
Thank you. I typed up my question a few days ago. So we've kind of talked about some of this. AI has benefits, but also raises serious concerns, challenges how we determine originality and authentic work. It's known to hallucinate information, requires significant energy resources, and early data suggests it may be displacing entry-level tech jobs that young computer science graduates need to launch their careers. Also, recent data shows Gen Z is less cognitively capable than previous generations due to unprecedented access to technology. The first generation of modern history to score lower on standardized tests than the previous one, due to screen time, a lot of that. You know, we've talked about some of the skills that get missing when you're moving all the way into that. And as someone who oversees student arts programming, I'm Reflections Chair for Council. It blurs the line between authentic student creativity and AI-generated content. It is often very hard to tell. I don't know these students. There are no reliable AI checkers. And you don't want to not give them the benefit of the doubt, but you also don't want them even using it in this particular program. They can't use it to give a prompt of what they should draw. That would be breaking the rules. There's no way for us to know that, right? So given the risks, what concrete steps should schools and policymakers take to prevent long-term harm? What specific policies or practices would you recommend implementing over the next 3 to 5 years?
Okay, I'm going to try to unpack that a little bit. What I hear you saying is the concerns that there's potential cheating or unfair advantages because people are accessing AI. Is that pretty close as a summary?
I was just listing a lot of the potential harms that we've kind of talked about. That is one of them. I think more so even is some cognitive decline in certain areas. And then also they're showing that new entry-level workforce for like basic level programmers, even the cyber field. As these kids are graduating right now, some of those jobs are going away and a lot harder to find. So there are, sure, every new technology has benefits, but like social media, we see a lot of harm from that, and it just gets pushed out so quickly that now we kind of know, hey, even though when math schools went to computers, we're seeing some cognitive decline. So now that we know these things happen, do you have ideas of specific steps schools can take or policymakers can do, things to kind of put some guardrails for the future? That's kind of my question. Thank you.
I don't have it specifically. I think we're all going to have to pay close attention to these guardrails. As far as the job market and entry-level jobs, I will tell you that's part of the plan. It is. Part of the plan is that entry-level jobs can be automated, and then humans focus on other jobs that aren't there yet. And so the challenge that we're all confronted with, and I even joked with Susie Lackhorn, not joked with her, but just mentioned to her, is there's a lot of conversation about accountants. There's tons of accountants, and now they're saying that essentially AI can be the accountant for a company. So these are jobs that young people are already in school in the thick of it to try to get that particular job. And so we're going to have to help our young people learn how to diversify their skill set and not go down one rabbit hole and not look at the other. And I think it's even more important, if we're going to teach kids something, is this idea of being human. Because that's the one thing that AI will not be able to replicate. And that humility piece is going to become more and more important. And that's why I think we have to work to make sure our teachers are infusing collaborative effort in the classroom, cooperating learning between peer-to-peer, group work, all of those things, because those are the things that go into the workforce. As Sarah talked about ICSI, when that was designed, it was a very clear picture. I was not doing a tour of that place. That building was designed for kids, and part of it was we knew these kiddos are asking to be in front of a screen at least 2 hours a day. They signed up for it. And we knew that these kiddos probably spent more time on the screen even beyond that time. So part of our effort was they have to go and do the tours. They have to speak to people. We have people from all over the White House, wherever, coming into that place. They do that tour. So we got to get kids to stand up, to be able to communicate, because guess what? They don't have AI telling them how to talk. So if you want to check for understanding, you want to verify whether a kid did it or didn't, have them present what they did. Because that's the only way we're going to be able to truly validate that this was not AI, but this was that person.
Ms. Moran, I don't know if you're privy to this information, but your graduates from ICSI, do you see them encountering issues with the job market? Because I personally, on the outside, heard opposite, that there is a lot of job opportunities for those kids. So,
Well, we just had our first year of students graduate last year from all their home prospective campuses, and we had a signing day for those students, and most of them went straight to college. So it's hard for me to give you that data right now because many of them are not working yet. I will say that we had a young man who was working at a computer repair store, Alltech. He gave a bunch of our tours, Geo. He was making $45 an hour as a 16-year-old working in a with the certifications he held from ICSI. So some may have trouble finding jobs, but I think with the skills, the skills that they have and those soft skills, those power skills that they've developed, that's going to give them an advantage. And so if we can promote that all across the board, not just at ICSI, at any school where students are heavy with technology, those skills are equally as important. If we can find a balance between those skills and the technology skills, our students are going to be set up for much more success than if they didn't have that.
I have another example of that one. ICSI is obviously a cybersecurity, and one of the things that we learned is that they're going to have to evolve too. So those kiddos right now are in high demand, but now they're going to have to learn how to create AI to combat the AI that's attacking the system. But you can't do that unless you have at least a foundational understanding of cybersecurity. So I don't think any of this stuff just goes away. I think it's just more in the sense of how you're going to apply your knowledge in a different kind of way. And then, because right now the kids are getting jobs. I saw one at the Nationals yesterday, Francisco. He was one of the first kiddos that went all the way through, and he's graduating from UTSA, already has a job offer. He'll be very, very successful.
We have some kids working at CrowdStrike already too.
Yeah. So right now that's a demand, but that's what we watch as a market. What jobs are on the uptick, and that's what we try to offer.
I think, we have a question up here and one more back there. You want me to go?
Yeah, so my question is real quick. I really don't like microphones. Thank you. I already talk loud enough, and I'm just over amplifying. She kind of alluded to it. Students alluded to it. We talk about critical thinking on the student's part, but what about the teacher's part as opposed to assuming it's AI having that conversation? I've got two kids in college, two different colleges, and one at Churchill High School, and they've all had to defend themselves in some way because text is text at some point, and we can only be so creative with our words, and it gets triggered. And teachers aren't doing research due diligence or being sometimes appropriate with their communications, but just making the accusation. And students automatically have to go on the defense. One of my kids' names got flagged for AI, right? And so it automatically went into the percentage of how much of the essay and content was AI. And that's a little ridiculous, and this was actually the college level, but that professor didn't stop and pause. It's an issue at all levels of, academia, which is assuming something is AI and not asking the teacher to use some critical thinking skills. Now, that's extra work on their part, and they already have a lot on their plate, but if it's something that is our reality, that we're allowing kids to use and we're introducing them, there kind of has to be a little bit more of a two-way street, because I think probably a lot of parents in here will say that their kids have come home and talked about AI, being accused of using AI in an inappropriate way, and they're automatically on the defense. So how do we combat that? How do we train teachers? How do we have a more reasonable, expectation on everyone's part involved?
And it's dangerous to assume anything for anybody. And so it should prompt the conversation, like you're saying, rather than an immediate accusation. And I know that's something we can do a better job with, as we're talking to teachers and as we're learning more and seeing how AI is being used. There would be nothing more embarrassing to me than for someone to think something I wrote was AI, So just prompting the conversation and not assuming and continuing to have those conversations on our end with teachers as those situations pop up, because when we assume anything, it tends to not go well in general, so applying that to the AI cheating conversations as well.
That has had to, you've had the encounter, how's it been for you, from your teachers accused you?
I would get like 60 on something, and then I would go, hey, why did I get this? And then they go, oh, you used AI. And then I have to defend myself by just like showing the work, paper form, written form, and just like having them look at the history of the edits and text. And I would just have to try my best to be polite about it because they're my teacher. But
And how does the teacher respond to you? That's the critical part. It's how is the teacher responding to you when you're defending yourself, when you know that you wrote it, and they're not believing you, and their immediate response was to give you a 60, which is very offensive to think that you have lied.
And after you put all your work to it,
Most of the teachers just didn't come up to me about it. They just put the grade in and moved on. So I had to come to them.
Right.
So then what was the result of that?
He acted very bothered, but changed it after I showed my evidence that I wrote it myself.
So there's an area for growth, I think, on the part of the district to have some training. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Not just training, but process.
Process,
I mean, here's the thing. If you don't do systems change, then you have random acts of kindness or weakness or hatred even. So I think one of the lessons learned in this conversation, I think what we can do is that when you flag or identify a kid as possibly using AI, there's the alternate choice. But it's front-loaded. Just saying, throughout the course of your education, you may get flagged for possible AI. What does that mean? That means two things. One, you can either present evidence, i.e. handwritten text or your tracking sheet, or B, you actually do a presentation basically going over your writing to validate your understanding of the content. And that was one of the things that my daughter ended up doing, even though the professor also acted bothered, annoyed, and all of that. But I think some of it is, how can we front load instead of the kids getting in trouble or the teacher getting in trouble? Maybe it's just, this is what we do. You're going to get flagged at some point. And if you're...
It feels like a lot of effort for somebody to turn in an essay to then basically have to defend their dissertation as if they were getting a PhD as a kid who's got 7, 8 other classes, to then have to defend one essay to one teacher.
And just so you know, this is not new. As far as back in the day, there used to be a program called turnitin.com. If anybody remember that. And English teachers would use that, and that's when they would flag and say somebody cheated on the paper, and this cycle has been going on for years. When I say defend, your defense is not necessarily for you to regurgitate your whole paper.
Yeah.
Do you know a summary? Can you summarize exactly what you wrote about? And I think that's a deeper level of learning, even so more so than the paper itself sometimes. And so that's what I mean about the alternative if you get flagged. And that way, kiddos are prepared. It's like, I know what I wrote about. Oh, my paper was flagged? Yes, I can tell you exactly what it was. And it's not a long dissertation. It's not standing in front of a whole audience to embarrass you. It's an opportunity to really give the context about your writing, and letting that teacher or professor or whoever else know that you know your stuff. And I think, honestly, if we get our kids to speak about what they wrote about, they're going to be a lot stronger anyway.
That reminds me of another thing real quick. Before I came onto the panel, I looked into a University of Harvard business review on people using generative AI, and out of a sample of 2,500, around most of the ones who were given the ability to write an essay with ChatGPT, most of them could not recount any of what they summarized, even if it just helped or boosted their writing. Most of them used it more reliantly versus using it as a little tool.
I have a comment real quick. It's just similar, but you have been a wonderfully well-spoken young lady. You seem like the type of child who would go and kind of say, hey, what's this with this bad grade? I have a child who would not do that if her life depended on it. And that goes back to similarly what you all have spoken about just the social anxiety that seems to be built in now to almost, I feel like it's almost like cool to have ADHD and everything else, but the reality is that is the reality for a lot of children. They are not going to question the 60. They're going to take it, they're going to move on. So we have, I think, a lot of children who are experiencing maybe some lower grades, not due to lack of effort, but who are not ever going to challenge, even politely, the grades that are given. They're just going to take it and move on. And I feel like that's a very sad state of affairs, but I applaud you that you go and that you're very well spoken and you seem to be able to rein in the emotions and say, hey, why did I get this? But that goes back to similar to what the rest of the panel was stating, that we need to build in more of that conversation or time set aside to maybe pull the child aside. And that's hard too, because then they get embarrassed and that might even, that my child would crumble. I mean, it's just the truth. But just maybe making that, like you say, more of an inclusive, look, this happens, this isn't just you, and that it's almost like a group effort in the response to that, because they're not alone. And I think in that moment when you're accused, you feel very alone and very defensive and maybe just crumble, not meaning to, but that has to be built in as well. As it's great to just throw the grade at the kid, but if there truly was something suspected, then that needs to be addressed and in a constructive way.
And I think in the interest of time, and I do appreciate all of your time today, I did want to end with a question for all of you. And as a parent, and I'd like to start with Jackson. As a parent, what advice would you give me in raising a child in the AI generation?
The advice that I would give a parent about using AI would just be to set boundaries. Make sure that they're not depending on it as much. Make sure that it's not the most important thing to them too.
Don't let your child use it as a crutch. It can be used as a tool. Don't use it excessively, and always double check the information and set boundaries.
Yeah, I agree with both of what these two folks just said, and I think have the conversation with your kiddo. What did you learn? What did you write about? And then what information will you take forward?
I think it's important as a parent that you're using AI so that you know what mistakes you're seeing when you are searching things or using it as a tool, and that can help in your conversations with your students if they know that you know what's going on.
Ditto. No. Really. And also come from a place of curiosity. Grow with each other. Learn together. And obviously, like they said, have the boundaries and just be curious on it. Ask lots and lots of questions. A lot of times those are where the answers are and where they lie. So that's what I would say. But yes, ditto all the way through.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I have 3 kids. I have a 5, a 9, and a 14-year-old, and I know that this is what they're going to grow up with. So having those conversations, being open and honest, letting them ask, talking to them about how you use it, just having conversations with them, and then setting boundaries and setting examples.
Robbie, I'd like to say something. I wanted to tell, since a lot of them are administrators and educators, and the way some people says that some students feel comfortable about talking, to the teacher and all that. Well, there are some students that, like my field of practice and my heart is always in advocacy and also special education. So a lot of the kids, even though like I come from, all my kids are on the spectrum. Some of them, my youngest of course is the most profound, so he needs more help and he probably wouldn't have any of these problems, right? But my other ones are very high functioning and, eidetic memory and a whole bunch of other stuff that come with it and have been accused and all that stuff. But of course they would not feel comfortable talking to something like that. So I appreciated at the time having those teachers come in and talk to the kids and all that. So I would recommend that maybe in your training and whatever that you would make it accessible for other kids like the ones that I have that would not have any educational, let's say per se IDD or anything like that, but are super high functioning and super awesome, but they do have those social skills that they lack just because of the diagnosis that they would have, that you would make it more accessible, like not only give that 60 or whatever, but you would go back and question the child like, hey, what's up or whatever, and provide those accessibility, and not just make it by eligibility, because of this and that, you don't qualify for this and that, or et cetera, making those exceptions maybe for everybody, just to make sure that everybody gets an equal grade. So I would recommend that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Josie. As your advocacy chair, I'd like to say that I think this was a very successful day today because I think the most important part of advocacy is starting a conversation, being able to listen to each other when we have those conversations. And I would like to thank all of you for coming and giving your time today. I know that time is precious and all of our time. I would really like to say thank you to our students, and you were very courageous today, very honest, and I very much appreciate it as a parent and as a council member. I feel that y'all gave us a lot of great things to think about. Thank you all so much, Ms. Moran, Ms. Whitaker, Ms. Pearson, Mr. Jarrett. Thank you. This is the beginning of a conversation I think we can all agree that could go a very long time, and I'm sure you will all get some more questions, Jackson and Alexa included. Welcome to advocacy. And I would like to tell everyone that we will have some resources that if you registered today for this, we'll send them out. Ms. Marina has an excellent presentation from their director, ICSI, and it's excellent, and I would like to send it to y'all along with the Texas State PTA pledge for AI. I implore you all to please look at it, take it, talk to your children about it, and let's just keep these conversations going. And thank y'all, and I hope you have a good week. And remember, early voting goes till Friday. Thank y'all.